So let's talk to Jasmine in Canada, who wants to talk about COVID vaccine ties into religion, politics, and society. So, a nice tight question.
Yes.
What do you want to talk about, Jasmine?
Well, I was listening to the previous callers, and I think one of the big threads through all that is fear. Like a lot of the people who propagate COVID misinformation are actually from the alternative health fields, to tell you the truth.
Right.
Like, I don't know if you two have heard of Rashid Butter.
No,
at all?
Not.
Nope.
Okay, he's an osteopath that's been spreading COVID misinformation for like a long time. He calls himself Dr. Butter, Butar, or whatever, however you say his name, but he's just an osteopath. And you should see you should hear
from
the
where,
things
may I
he
ask?
says.
From where, may I ask?
Somewhere in the U.S. I can actually pull up.
So
Somewhere
osteopaths in the U.S.
USA.
are... Yeah, osteopaths in the U.S. are equivalent to MDs in the U.S. So I want to clarify that.
Oh, okay. I don't think they're not quite equivalent here, but I guess I wouldn't know in the U.S. Anyway,
No, because I'm actually in a DO program, so if he's a DO, it's the same degree. Yeah, in the U.S. it's the same thing.
Oh, okay. In Canada, it's not, or at least as far as I know. But yeah, he's saying like the COVID vaccine has Marburg, Ebola, E. coli, and that everybody who has a COVID vaccine has these quote unquote sleeper cells in them, and that everybody eventually that had the COVID vaccine or multiples there die, will in his world will die a most miserable death. And he goes on all the religious talk shows. He's been on many shows, but it's all misinformation. CNN did a piece on him, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's such a great doctor." Oh, da 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 da. You listen to it like 5 minutes, and you know he's full of shit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a DO specific thing. There's like all sorts of people from every profession who are spewing anti-vax COVID BS.
Well,
right? Like
there are some MDs and some well-educated people, but it's mostly, I think, coming from the alternative sectors and the lay people. I don't think there's...
I agree.
Except for maybe a few that might... But, yeah, Butter, he's even been kicked from one of his professional bodies for apparently something equivalent to injecting bleach into the kids. He had some professional misconduct that got his license taken away for a time.
Yeah, I mean, that happens, right? Like, it doesn't matter necessarily what your degree is. If you act poorly, they will take it away. If you don't act in, appropriately. But what did you want to what did you want to talk about specifically?
Well, I want to talk about COVID vaccines, how the misinformation compares from one country to another, and how we handled it from one country to another, and how most of the COVID vaccine misinformation seems to be coming from the Christian right.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
Well, I actually have two studies that link it to the... I believe they're from the U.S., but I have two studies here linking it to Christian nationalism, white Christian identity. Let me look here. But basically, it's linking it to the republic, the right, the Christian identity, and or correlating it to those things. And just from what I'm reading and what I'm seeing, that seems to be the case in both Canada and the U.S. It's linked to the more so the right, but also the Christian identity.
And what does that mean to you? What do you think of that?
Well, I wonder what it says with regards to how the religious people perceive the religious public perceive things, is say how opposed to the educated or the atheist people see things. I'm wondering if we're not more prone to believing in woo, as you guys call it.
I mean, I think that there is so my personal opinion is that I think that the religious right has an anti-vax component that is largely conspiracy minded and distrustful of institutions, and I think that that politically aligns with the right. They're distrustful of government and large organizations and things like that, and I think that's correlated with Christianity. But I also think on the other side of the spectrum, there's a lot of like wooey left-wing people, like hippie liberals, who think that if it's natural, it's good, and vaccines are unnatural, and you should just go out and live in the sun or eat this plant or whatever. So I mean, I don't disagree that you can find correlations between anti-vax sentiment in the Christian right. I think that you can. I think you could also find it in the you know atheist, liberal, vaguely spiritual, perhaps left. Those hippie groups. Like frankly, it's like a bell curve, right? It's like most people fall in the middle where they don't have any non-mainstream beliefs about this stuff. But on the fringes, you get people who are distrustful, and they fringe on both sides of the political spectrum.
Well,
what do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I can't deny I've seen. Ben.
Yeah, ahead, Ben. I think that this is largely an issue related to thought process and how people think about certain problems. I think oftentimes we relate these anti-vax sentiments and other alternative medicine ideas with religion, because I mean, and you'll see this on the atheist side too, because you can get to a what we would consider to be the right answer of we are not convinced that there's a deity, but you can arrive at that conclusion for bad reasons and poor reasoning. So that being said, it's more likely that if you're using poor reasoning for a supernatural claim, that you would also use similar reasoning for a medical claim. But that being said, if somebody was an atheist that used poor reasoning to get to atheism, then they might also be susceptible to use poor reasoning in other circles. So I think that's kind of why, if there's any correlation, that would be my guess. But again, we can't really take a correlation and then say that this is the cause of X happening. No. But that would be my hypothesis there.
Yeah. I mean, I think you nailed it, Ben. It's probably that the common thread is actually that there's poor reasoning going on at some point, and that poor reasoning can lead people to different opinions on like politics, for instance, or religiosity, probably based on their upbringing or their circumstance or whatever. But the fact that they, we like to think that reality is our anchor, and we interpret reality with our ability to reason, and that is what anchors us to like what is typically mainstream beliefs, and it keeps us from being blown into like conspiracy theory territory, whereas people who don't have that anchor, or the chain that connects the anchor to their ship in this metaphor is the reasoning. If that is missing, then they can get blown away somewhere, right? Like that's the way I'm sort of interpreting this. What do you think, Jasmine?
Well, I mean, both of your points are valid, but can we discuss another case I came across?
Sure.
MD, have you heard of Romana Didulo, Queen of Canada?
Yeah, I've heard of the Queen of Canada.
Yeah. Did you want to discuss her and her anti-vax and all that?
I mean, the only thing remarkable about her is that she declared herself Queen of Canada. Otherwise, like, she'd be just another, fringe anti-vaxxer / whatever else, right? She's got a lot of like wicked beliefs. She'd be an interesting person to talk about. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about her off the top of my head to have like a fulsome discussion of her various beliefs. Hey, maybe we should try to get her as a guest on the show. But I don't know, Ben, have you heard of this person?
I have not.
Yeah. So like, I don't know. Jasmine, what do you know about her?
Well, she's anti-vax. She has religious ties. Obviously, she claims she's the Queen of Canada. Very big in conspiracy theories. I think she believes she's part alien or some type of alien. And like I said, there's definitely religious ties. I think her kingdom, she calls it the Kingdom of Canada, and sort of a lot of religious rhetoric too. So she's kind of got a little bit of everything. You want conspiracy theories? Go to her. You want?
Yeah, I think recently she issued like a warrant to her followers to arrest all police officers or something like that. And so a whole bunch of people tried to do like citizens arrests on police officers, and like they themselves then got arrested.
Yep.
So that was fun. That was a fun news cycle.
Yeah, they think. Yeah, the interesting things we got up here. we sometimes our stuff makes the U.S. stuff make it look tame, but I don't know. But yeah, she's got it all. But do you think she's like? Do you think we'll just see something like her again and again and again? We see this anti-vax, this religious, this conspiracy.
I mean, there have been anti-vaxxers since vaccines were invented, right? Like, I don't know if we'll see another person claiming to be the Queen of Canada, but there's always going to be people on, like, anytime a major point of division comes up, there's going to be people on all sides, and there's going to be people on the fringes of literally everything. That's fine. It's what this show is based on, right? So we can't hold too much ire towards them as long as they're not doing a lot of harm. And I think she's relatively harmless. I don't know. I think the vaccine uptake in Canada is pretty good, relatively speaking.
Better than the U.S.
I'm sorry. I disagree. I do not like anybody who's anti-vax. I had somebody who I knew died of COVID, so I'm not a fan of anybody who's anti-vax.
You're not a fan of what?
Initially, what brought me to anti-vax people.
Oh, I'm not a fan of anti-vax people. I'm just saying that they're like if vaccines exist, then anti-vax people will exist, and that's like I'm skeptical of like, I don't think that we will ever be rid of anti-vaxxers. As long as vaccines exist, I think there will be people who are against them, and I think we gotta, like, I'm still going to tell my patients to get vaccinated, and I'm still going to get all my vaccines, and I'm still going to advocate for vaccination. But I don't like think that it's a realistic expectation that we will one day do away with all anti-vaxxers. Just like I don't think there will ever be a time when there are no religious people, right? Like, there's gonna, no matter how much we do these shows and whatever, there's always going to be some religious people somewhere. We just got to work on getting that number to be as small as possible.
What do you think is or what do you think the ties between the religious and the anti-vax? Like, how do we, if we're trying to mitigate the problems with religion and anti-vax and all that, how do we go about that?
Education. I think education's the big factor. Teaching people how to evaluate truth claims, like what we're doing on this show and all the other HCA shows. And because if you're using poor reasoning to get to any claims, you can get to any number of conspiracy claims through that. So if we can correct the thought process, then we can encourage people to take correct approaches to every area of their lives. Are we going to be able to reach everybody? No. But with the people that we can, they can use techniques on their friends, say, hey, I noticed like you have this conspiratorial view. What makes you think that? and of course not in those words. You handle it a bit more gently, but
yeah, more tactfully.
But we, through encouraging things in policy as well as like education, like saying people need education in schools, encouraging critical thinking, those are things that we can do. So I don't think that we're just letting people believe this stuff, but at the same time, I think that's the primary way we're going to combat any of it.
Mm-hmm. All right, Jasmine, final word.
Okay, so what? Okay, how do we prevent anti-vax cults, anti-medicine cults from popping up continuously?
What do you think?
Well, you said education. Anything else? Anything maybe along the emotional side we can do, or the societal side, or even, I don't know, philosophically, maybe a thought?
What do you think? What would you do if you were the Queen of Canada?
I think we're just going to tax the hell out of everybody and get a revolution started.
Against the Queen? Against yourself? You're the Queen of Canada. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough question.
Well, no, I have to depose Romano.
Yeah, it's a tough question.
Maybe it's too broad of a question to answer singly.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that's
angles, multiple.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so sorry, Jasmine. We have to wrap up the show. We are over time. But thanks for your call. Very thought-provoking, and feel free to call back in the future. It's always a stimulating conversation when you call in.